Premier, what did you make of what the opposition is saying in the House? So the criticism you've been able to hear for the last day or so on the budget, and they're pointing at there should have been more affordability measures done. What's your response?
Yeah, this is about balance. There's some significant investments which we discussed yesterday in the space of our classrooms, a record investment in our operating education budget and healthcare, and the transfers that are going to our municipalities, which are our communities. Really record investment across the board, and balancing that, ensuring that the affordability measures that we have in place today are there. There's no new tax increases in this budget. This is unlike what we're seeing at other levels of government, where we see carbon taxes increasing each and every year. There's none in this budget that we had put forward. And as I said, when you look through the budget and you look at the comparisons of Saskatchewan communities with other Canadian communities, we fare very well. Second lowest utility bundle, 112,000 people we talk about that have been removed from the tax rolls. Those are low-income families, and we did that by raising the rate to where, for example, a family of four might start paying tax. I believe in Saskatchewan that taxable rate today is $59,000. It was $26,000 17 years ago, and so the graduate retention program is kept whole. There was some increases where we feel that they need to happen. For example, in our Saskatchewan Income Support Program, our Saskatchewan Assured Income Disability Program, both experienced increases. And then some of the transitionary funding for those folks that and families in particular that may be on SIS for a period of time. To quote Lauren Calvert, that is a funding of last resort and should be a transitionary program. The Saskatchewan Employment Supplement, I believe it's called, had a $17 million increase. And really, that's about part of our whole strategy on allowing families, individuals to find a better place in their life and in their community.
Do you think that in an election year the opposition owes some explanation as to what they would do post-budget, whether they would spend, whether they would cut taxes, that sort of thing?
Yeah, and still work towards some semblance of balance at the end of the day. And you've heard me in the House and other times say, why would you take away funding for our highways, for example, which they did last time they were in government, and so they will have to explain as we head towards an election as to what your actual plan is and how you're going to fund that plan. Are you going to tax industries to the point that they might not make investments here? And we know where our investment levels are today. We're second in the nation, forecast to be first in the nation this in-year. So they will have to explain that today, and that's the election, and that's the choice that Saskatchewan people will ultimately make. Do they want to choose a government that is balancing the affordability of living in Saskatchewan, of which we rank first on many metrics, with a government that, and while balancing that with the ability to continue to invest this year at record levels in our classrooms, in our care, and in our communities, versus an opposition that would tax those industries and really ruin that investment environment, creating chaos in our communities and ultimately closure eventually of the very facilities that we are making every effort to invest not only in building but in staffing and offering the services that Saskatchewan people expect. And at the end of the day, I think that is the choice that Saskatchewan people will have is, which party do they feel is going to offer the best opportunity for services into the future in healthcare, in education, in building our highways, in supporting the communities and where we live.
I kind of here's what kind of reaction you were hoping to get out of the budget in regard to creating a little bit of momentum going into the fall campaign, because it's not the kind of budget that is going to get people either mad or excited, or that seemed to be the reaction today. And that's kind of unusual for an election budget. So is that a satisfactory reaction? As steady as she goes has not necessarily been how this government has hoped.
Well, steady as she goes, with record population increase, steady as she goes with record investment statistics, steady as she goes with record job increases year over year, isn't such a bad thing. We're leading or second or third in the nation in all of those statistics, leading or second or third in the nation when it comes to the affordability of life here in Saskatchewan. And so steady as she goes is, a pretty positive thing if you live in the province of Saskatchewan. That isn't to say that we aren't facing some challenges at the community level, at our family level, and at the provincial government level, and they are challenges of growth. And I think we still, as a population, are, very much would choose the challenges of growth over the problems of decline. We've seen both in the last 25 or 30 years, and the challenges of growth are very real, but I think Saskatchewan people most certainly will choose those challenges over the problems of a declining population, and at a time, quite frankly, where Saskatchewan's largest growing city was Calgary, and that is not the case anymore.
Premier, do you have any thoughts on the confidence vote that leader of the federal opposition is hoping to push on the carbon tax in House of Commons?
Yeah, my thoughts are if we had a vote on the floor of the Parliament, we would vote for the opposition's motion against the government. We've always been very clear when it comes to the carbon tax. It should be removed on everything for everyone. And we would encourage all parties, in particular the NDP and the Bloc, to vote with the opposition on this motion. We understand that would force an election, a carbon tax election, and we would be in favor of that election sooner rather than later. This is a minority administration that is trying to stretch their tenure out past what is the customary 4 years to ultimately the 5 years. And I think an administration that is no longer representative of the people of Canada, and they should put their administration to a vote. And so commending the opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre, for bringing that to the floor. We'll be watching closely how the opposition parties vote, and we'd encourage all of them to vote with the opposition. This is the most inflationary tax that this nation has right now. Nowhere is that more evident than just right here in Saskatchewan, where we reduced the carbon tax off our home heating natural gas and electricity, and we've dropped a full point on our consumer price index. Statistics Canada said that was due to us removing the carbon tax off our home heating fuel. Can you imagine if rather than increase the carbon tax on fuel to 17 cents per litre this year, they actually removed it altogether? What that would do for the economy in Saskatchewan, and what it would do for Saskatchewan families when it comes to the affordability matrix that they have when they're filling up their fuel tank to take their kids to soccer, to dance, to the extracurricular activities that we hope will continue.
The opposition says it's not so much about spending more money, but it's about spending those dollars wisely. So what are you doing to spend those dollars wisely instead of just spending more?
So what I would say is that's the opposition's opinion, and they would have to put forward what they would do actually to spend those dollars more wisely, because the record, quite frankly, doesn't say anything of the sort. They tax companies and industries more in their time in power, to the point that they did not invest here. When they taxed them to a level that they wouldn't invest here, they actually nationalized those industries and really drove our economy into what was one of the worst growth rates in the nation of Canada. With that declining economy, we saw hospital closures, we saw school closures. That's the record. They'll have to indicate what they would do differently with respect to the dollars that are flowing into the provincial revenue lines here today, and what they would do with those dollars with respect to what they would do differently. What we're trying to do is listen to Saskatchewan residents, all Saskatchewan residents, and then allocate those dollars in the best way that we can. And I would say that in the time ahead, and we saw that allocation in the priority in yesterday's budget in classrooms, almost 9% increase in our operating budget, record operating budget increase to our school divisions in the province, 10%, over 10% increase to our healthcare budget, and a 14% increase to the municipal revenue sharing program, of which isn't present in other provinces. And that is what we have prioritized due to, I think, what we feel MLAs have heard from constituents across this province, whether they be in rural areas, the northern area, or whether they be in many of our urban centres, up to and including our two largest urban centres. And we're starting to see results from some of that investment. This isn't new in this budget, to your earlier question, Marie. We've added dollars to the Health Human Resource Plan over the course of the last couple of years, starting to see results there with the 1,000 Canadian graduate nurses hired, over 400 Filipino nurses hired, 170 of them are on the ground in a facility, in a community offering services. Our surgical wait times have dropped 23%. More work to do, and I think what this budget does is puts the investment behind the effort and the initiatives that are in place to ensure that the trajectory that we appear to be on, whether it be in surgical wait times, in hiring staff to offering services, lowering any of the disruptions in our rural communities and our urban centres, is well funded, is funded into the future. And now, in the case of healthcare, we expect the Saskatchewan Health Authority to deliver now that they have that security of funding.
Right. I mean, your government is sending patients to Calgary. That's 10 times, for mammograms, that's 10 times the cost of doing it here. You're also spending millions more on contract nurses. And you're spending a lot more money on hotels instead of fixing our own Saskatchewan housing units. So how is that wise spending?
Temporary initiatives. To ensure that as we hire people into our healthcare system, we're able to offer those services right here in our province. And we will think of any innovative ways and solutions. And other provinces are doing very similar things. Some are sending to the U.S. and other areas for various scans and surgeries. These are very, very temporary initiatives. It's not in our long-term plan to have contract nurses working in our communities. And we've talked openly, and I've talked openly with the Saskatchewan Union of Nurses about that. It is our long-term plan to have, full-time, as many full-time hired nurses, not only working in our facilities in communities across this province, but living in those very communities and offering those services to people that they live alongside. That is the measure of a healthy healthcare system over the long term. That's the goal. And so many of these initiatives, they're somewhat innovative, they're somewhat different than maybe what has been the norm in the past, but I would say the majority, if not all of them, are temporary. Temporary ways for us to reduce our surgical wait times, temporary ways for us to ensure that we're not having disruptions in communities of healthcare services or whatever the challenge might be. The long-term initiative is to have our full-time hired staff in those facilities, and that's why we have what I say is the most ambitious health human resource plan, recruitment plan in the nation.
Premier, could I ask you a little bit about the multilateral well program that was in the energy resources portion of the budget? What was
you might have to ask Jim Ryder, but you can try me.
I'm going there next, but was that part of the whole goal of trying to hit 600,000 barrels?
Yeah, so there's a number of initiatives, many of them coming out of energy and resources and a few out of trade and export development, and maybe even a little bit out of ag, about really targeting in or focusing in on some of the growth plan goals that we have. When we talk about the investment environment here in Saskatchewan and how we rank compared to other provinces, we're second as of last year with a 25% increase in our capital investment in the province. Up another 14% is the projection for this in-year, which will put us first in the nation of Canada. We're seeing a lot of that investment come into the ag value-added space. We're seeing a lot of that investment come into the mining space with uranium mines, copper mines, obviously the significant investment of BHP with their potash mine, but other potash mines investing as well. And we are the largest source of potash exports in the nation now, quite proudly, and the most sustainable product that you can find as well. One gap that we have when it comes to the investment or the potential for investment is in our oil sector in the province, of which is some of the most sustainable product that you can find on earth. And we encourage people that need that product to buy it from Saskatchewan. We're seeing some investment up in on the western side of the province, up in North Battleford, Lloydminster area, with some of the thermal wells that are happening there. But I think there is a great opportunity for additional investment throughout the rest of the province. And what we're trying to do is poise ourselves for success and successfully capturing that investment into the future. The largest hindrance that we have today, in our view, that is hindering that investment coming into our province and communities like Swift Current and Estevan and Weyburn is our federal government. And the policies that the federal government are putting forward that are creating uncertainty for those folks that would invest in drilling for oil in Saskatchewan. Again, some of the most sustainable oil in the world. In fact, the only net zero oil company that I'm aware of is operating right here in Saskatchewan in the Weyburn-Midale field. And so what we are trying to do is ensure that we have the most attractive regulatory investment environment for that industry provincially, so that we can do what we can, pull the strings that we can to attract that investment, to achieve our growth plan target, and I think we can go beyond that. And ultimately, should there be a vote of non-confidence in the House this week, and we encourage the Bloc and the NDP to join with the Conservatives, and let's put this federal minority administration to the election test. We feel with a change of federal government that there would be a significant change in the certainty that would be provided in that energy sector investment, and we want to be ready as a province of Saskatchewan for when that happens.
I understand Eric Klein is coming out of a book, I believe this week. He's former energy minister. I believe it's called Squandered, and he'll be talking a fair bit about, I haven't seen it yet, but about royalty resources, particularly potash and whatnot.
Oh, would he be criticizing his own policies? Is that what?
Well, I guess that my question is that is this province, has it looked at all recently, or will it be looking at its royalty structure, not just for oil and gas, but lithium, potash in particular, because are we leaving money on the table?
Yeah, well, what we're always looking at in our royalty structure, whether it be potash, whether it be uranium, whether it be oil, whether it be some of the future minerals that we hope to be and will be, I think, mining here in Saskatchewan, whether it be rare earths, lithium, some of the critical minerals that are there. We need to find a balance on what is an attractive investment environment, and we are competing globally on those capital dollars that will come in for those mines and for any of the production of those products that we have, but balance that with a fair return for Saskatchewan people. We feel we've not only achieved that largely in the industries that we have, but continue to keep an eye on that as we move forward. We had just recently changed some of the potash rates that we had 3 years ago, ensuring that we are looking at not only keeping things in check with respect to the provincial budget on the percentage that we're reliant on natural resources, but ensuring that Saskatchewan people are achieving a fair return for the product that we are, co-investing, I think, with various companies to provide to the world. And so I think we're about, it was a 12.5 or 13.5% of this year's budget is due to natural resource royalties. I'd have to just clarify that. And but we're always watching that, ensure that and balancing that Saskatchewan people are getting a fair return on the resource royalties and the taxation that is occurring on any of the companies that are operating here, in addition to the jobs and the opportunities that are provided in those communities, but keeping that investment attraction environment very, very competitive so that we continue to attract that investment. And that's what we're seeing today with ranking second in the nation this past year and forecast to be first this year when it comes to capital investment.
To go back on some of your earlier comments about challenges of growth, a big contributor to the growth that the province has seen has been in immigration. So how much has immigration increased in the last year or so?
So we're up about 30,000 people in the last year, and when you project that, we will achieve our growth plan target of 1.4 million people by the year 2030. In fact, you may even see us this year achieve 1.25 million people in the province, which is up, 250,000 people during with the time that we've had the honor to form government. And so I think if we just pause there for a moment, that's why you've maybe seen the focus in yesterday's budget on classrooms. We need more classrooms as we have more people that live in our communities. A focus on healthcare. We need more healthcare capacity, and our expectations around what is being provided in our healthcare centers have changed over the last 5 and 10 years for sure. And so that investment, that 10% increase into our healthcare sector is very much needed. And our communities are growing. You saw 11 new schools. One of those schools is over 3,000 students, is projected to be in that school on the east side of Saskatoon, joint use high school. 11 new schools in the province. We need more classrooms. We need more healthcare facilities. And our communities, our municipalities are also facing the very same growth challenges that I spoke of, but also facing some of the inflationary challenges that are present here as well. And that's why you saw a 14% increase in the municipal revenue sharing program, and looking for a new capital reload of the ISIP program from the federal government as we move forward as well. So these are challenges. As people move to Saskatchewan and people stay in Saskatchewan, our children ultimately is the goal, stay in Saskatchewan to have a career in maybe the community where they were raised or another community in our province. These are challenges that are new to us. Alberta has been working through the challenges of growth for 5 or 6 decades, as we were both about 1 million people at the turn of the last half century, about 1950. And so Alberta has been working through these for many, many years. This is somewhat new to Saskatchewan, but nonetheless, they are challenges, and that's why you're seeing a government that is committed to building schools over the long term. We're over 60 new schools that have been built during our time in government, 30 major renovations. You're seeing a government yesterday that is committed to fulfilling the operational budget for those school divisions so that they can hire the teachers and the EAAs and the staff that we need to offer the services in those new schools and in those classrooms that are being built. And so the challenges are there. they are challenges of growth, and I still feel, very deep in my heart that the majority of Saskatchewan people, if not all, will take those challenges of growth far before they take the problems of decline.
Is it possible is it possible that as a province we're growing too fast to keep up with, and that's why we're seeing this record amount of spending?
I've been asked that question from time to time, and herein lies the balance of economic immigration versus, some of the other streams of immigration that we see, and whether it be whatever that might be. And so through the SINP program, our province does largely control a significant number of the economic immigrants that are coming, and we're always working with industries and I would say communities as well on what that looks like and what the selection process is like, so that we're fulfilling the needs that our industries need, but also fulfilling the needs that our communities can manage as well, our schools can manage. And so that is a constant conversation, and I think an ongoing conversation. And then you add to that, for example, they weren't officially refugees. I believe the federal government had a special program for families that were coming from Ukraine, for instance. A significant number of families have landed in Saskatchewan from Ukraine due to being displaced with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Those are a different stream, a federal stream that was formed, and then we have obviously the various other streams that the federal government controls. What we've asked the federal government, and many other provinces, most notably Quebec, have asked for more control over the immigration streams that we have, so that we can best work with communities and industries to meet the needs that we have. But I would say, and the employment strategy that was released here just about 2 weeks ago by Minister Harrison up in Saskatoon, the primary focus needs to be on training people that are here. And herein lies the opportunity for our children to stay in the province. Herein lies the opportunity for us to drastically increase some of the workforce rates and the workforce retention rates that we have, for example, in our Indigenous populations. And herein lies the opportunity for, a very fulsome opportunity for the growth that we're experiencing in Saskatchewan to be shared by everyone. Regardless of where you live, or if it's in the north or the south or in a First Nations community or otherwise. And so I think the training and the career development that is happening, whether it be in our post-secondary institutes, some of our regional colleges, is absolutely imperative to the ultimately the success of Saskatchewan. Immigration is part of it. Credential recognition comes with that, but the training of people that were born and raised here, I think, is paramount concern and should be our primary focus.
That kind of leads into my next question, because we're having record growth in population. We're still seeing shortages of teachers, shortages of nurses. So is that what this training program is hoping to help address in some sense?
Yeah, in a way, but go beyond that. Also into the private sector industry, for example, construction folks, electricians, trades, those types of things. I would say that in many ways it's working, and we're adding to that some targeted efforts and initiatives. And I would point back to the Health Human Resource plan that we had put forward a couple of years ago now, and some of the successes that they're seeing. Yes, we were in the Philippines and offered positions to over 400 folks from the Philippines to find their way through the immigration process, the credential recognition process, and 170 of those are in a Saskatchewan community offering services. Alongside that, we've hired 1,000 Canadian grads, and a good many of them are from the province of Saskatchewan, and I think that's important to note as well, and the proportion is important to note. And so, ongoing, the work around, for example, I think nurses and healthcare workers, whether it be lab and X-ray techs, whatever designation or discipline, is really where we've noticed some of the challenges as opposed to education and such. There has been some very significant, I think, expansions of the number of training seats that we have in various disciplines that the Saskatchewan Health Authority and communities have guided us on, where we need, for example, more lab and X-ray tech seats. We need more nurse practitioner seats. And so we had announced a while ago 550 healthcare training seats in a number of different post-secondary institutes. I think there was another 100 and some that were added in yesterday's budget. Those are about training our children here in Saskatchewan and providing them with the opportunity to stay here in Saskatchewan. and work either with our Saskatchewan Health Authority or whoever might be offering those services.
Ms. Wilson today called your caucus a bunch of liberals. How do you respond to that?
I don't, that's the only person in the world that would accuse me of being a liberal. I mean, there's really, when you look back over the course of the last, when was I had the fortunate opportunity to be elected leader in 2018. I think in my very first speech, it was pretty evident that I wasn't voting for the federal Liberal Party. I think as you look at some of the policies that we've brought forward, responsive to really the policies that are destructive and inflationary to families and industry and restricting investment in our nation, including in Saskatchewan. And, we're doing well in Saskatchewan in spite of the federal government, not because of them. That is the only person that I have ever met that has accused me of having any liberal lean to the policies that I put forward personally or that our government puts forward. And so you'll have to ask her to explain that.
And how do you respond to her saying your government's net zero plans for 2050 are going to destroy the economy?
Yeah, so the last climate change plan that was signed by all provinces, territories, and the federal government was the Vancouver Declaration, and that was Premier Wall that signed that. That was a high-level indicative plan of where provinces and the federal government, it was I think 2016, if maybe, the provinces and the federal government and territories would work together to come up with solutions and avenues on how they could reduce emissions. And they had 3 or 4 different categories on that. Post that Vancouver Declaration was a Minister of the Environment Ministers in Montreal, where we were to start to work and shape as to what some of that might be. If you'll remember correctly, I was at that meeting as a Minister of Environment at the time. It was announced to us just before lunch by then Minister McKenna that the Prime Minister was going to stand in his place at the House of Commons and announce that all provinces will be implementing a carbon tax or the federal government would backstop it. And after that, the conversation has progressed ultimately to the Supreme Court of Canada, and now today we see that the federal government is threatening one of our ministers with a carbon jail. So I don't think anyone can say that we have been in any way passively receptive to the carbon taxation policy that the federal Liberals have brought in place, supported by the NDP, or any of the other policies, whether it be clean electricity standard or anything of that sort. And so that was the deal that we walked out of that meeting. We did not sign that agreement. That's the last pan-Canadian agreement that was ever offered. Well, to my knowledge, that was offered to the provinces. We walked out. I believe Nova Scotia didn't sign that deal, and I don't think Yukon did initially. Today, we're the only province that has not signed the pan-Canadian climate agreement that Minister McKenna had put forward that day. I'd say the federal government still owes us $64 million because that was the cash bonus to sign that deal, and we should invoice them for that. So she's wrong. She's absolutely wrong, as this is the one province that has stood out among all other provinces when it comes to opposing federal Liberal policies that are pushing up inflation for Saskatchewan families, Canadian families, pushing up the cost of doing business in our nation and in our province, and ultimately are doing virtually nothing when it comes to reducing emissions. That's why we went to Dubai, was to represent on the sustainability front what we are actually doing in Saskatchewan when it comes to our agricultural production, our oil production, our potash production, and we're doing it better and more sustainable than anyone else in the world. And so she's wrong on all accounts. On the electricity generation account, also wrong, as we move towards, transitioning some of how we create electricity due to federal policy that is in place. We are ensuring a few things and prioritizing a few things. One is affordable electricity for families and competitive electricity rates for industries that are investing in Saskatchewan. Two, is we need to ensure that we have a reliable supply, again, for families, so that when they turn on the light switch or when it gets cold, that their furnace fan is running and the lights actually do come on. So we need an affordable and a reliable electricity grid here in the province. And we need to ensure that as we move along through the years and the decades, that we are working with industry on the needs that industry has, and some of those needs are the industries are watching what the environmental sustainability of electricity grid is, and so we're working with industry on exactly what that means as we move forward. That's why you've seen us, as our coal-fired plants start to time out in their service, and we are going to run them either on coal or natural gas till the end of their life, because that does affect the cost of electricity that we pay here in Saskatchewan, that we're very seriously looking at and likely going to be moving forward with something in the nuclear space. We mine uranium here. Canada has the technology. Saskatchewan companies have ownership in the nuclear space, not just in the uranium mining. So it only makes sense that as we are starting to max out hydro capacity, renewable power is not reliable baseload power, that we need a source that is going to provide us baseload power into the future. So we're going to run out the life of the assets that we have, and that includes some of the natural gas plants that are not even built yet or operational. Some are not even started. We're going to run the life cycle of those plants out as well. But we are going to look at SMRs at the very least into the future to ensure that we can provide that baseload, affordable, reliable power grid to Saskatchewan residents, and to continue to attract industry into Saskatchewan.
Last question.
No,
I'm wondering if the Trudeau government has lost its mandate to govern in your mind, given how unpopular it is with Canadians, according to polls.
yeah, I thought that a long time ago. They're a minority administration. They're only propped up by the NDP, and I actually would lay this at the feet of the NDP. They're the party that has never been close to the halls of power. Never been closer than they are today. And they absolutely refuse to represent Canadians in any way. Canadians are looking for a change, in my opinion, and I think many Canadians' opinion. And I would ask Jagmeet Singh that he has an opportunity this week, and the Bloc as well have an opportunity this week to vote with Pierre Poilievre on the confidence motion that's coming to the floor of the House. Vote to save Canadian money. Vote to save Canadians' jobs, or if they do decide, if Jagmeet Singh does decide to vote with the Liberals, he's really voting to save one job, and that's the Prime Minister's.